Why do maps always seem to hold so many secrets?
Because they are the footprints of history, waiting for someone to trace the path back home.
Why do we search for the past?
Perhaps because the stories buried in these maps are the only things that truly tell us who we are today.
My name is Chinedu Okafor.
Last week, we uncovered the fascinating story of how Nigeria was created. We traced the events that led to the 1914 amalgamation and discovered how two separate protectorates were merged into one country called Nigeria. But after I finished that research, another question immediately came to my mind. What exactly was the Northern Protectorate before the amalgamation? What kind of society existed there? How were the people governed? What was everyday life like? And perhaps the biggest question of all, what did Britain actually find when it arrived? Those questions sent me back into the archives. Once again, I found myself surrounded by history books, colonial records, old maps, journals, and photographs. I honestly thought I already knew the story. But I was wrong. The deeper I dug, the more I realized the Northern Protectorate was far more organized and sophisticated than many people imagine today. So come with me as we travel back more than 100 years. Before there was Nigeria, before the amalgamation, to the forgotten story of the Northern Protectorate, the first thing that surprised me was that northern Nigeria was never an empty land waiting to be discovered. It was already home to millions of people living in organized societies. By the 19th century, much of the region was under the influence of the Sokoto Caliphate, one of the largest and most influential states in Africa at the time. Founded after the Fulani Jihad led by Usman Dan Fodio in the early 1800s, the Caliphate stretched across a vast area of what is now northern Nigeria and parts of neighboring countries. This wasn't a loose collection of villages, it was a functioning political system. There were Emirs who governed different emirates. There were judges who settled disputes according to Islamic law. There were tax systems. There were organized markets. There were scholars, teachers, farmers, craftsmen, and traders. As I continued reading, I realized something that challenged what many of us were taught. Long before British rule, northern Nigeria already had an established system of government. The Emir ruled each emirate, but he wasn't acting alone. He worked with advisors, religious scholars, district heads, and community leaders. Together, they maintained law and order and managed the affairs of their people. Then I asked myself another question. If government already existed, what was everyday life actually like? The answer painted a remarkable picture. Every morning, markets came alive with activity. Merchants displayed colorful woven fabrics, beautifully crafted leather goods, spices, grains, livestock, and handmade tools. People traveled from distant towns to trade. Some even came from across the Sahara Desert. Camel caravans carried salt, textiles, leather, and other valuable goods across long trade routes connecting West Africa with North Africa. Trade wasn't just local. It was international. Then I discovered another fascinating part of life in the Protectorate. Education. Many children attended Islamic schools, where they learned to read and write Arabic, memorized the Quran, and studied subjects such as law, theology, mathematics, and literature. Scholarship was highly respected. Some cities became famous centers of learning, attracting students from far beyond the region. The more I researched, the clearer it became that knowledge held an important place in society. Life wasn't only about politics or trade. Agriculture formed the backbone of the economy. Farmers cultivated millet, sorghum, beans, cotton, onions, and groundnuts. Large herds of cattle, sheep, and goats grazed across the open grasslands. Families worked together during planting and harvest seasons. Women played important roles in food processing, weaving, pottery, dyeing, and local commerce. Communities depended on one another. Markets weren't just places to buy and sell. They were centers of social life where people exchanged news, settled disputes, celebrated festivals, and strengthened relationships. At this point, I thought I understood the Northern Protectorate. But then I reached another turning point in my research. Britain. How exactly did Britain take control of such a vast and organized region? The answer wasn't simple. During the late 19th century, Britain became increasingly interested in the region because of trade, political influence, and competition with other European powers. Initially, much of Britain's commercial activity was carried out through the Royal Niger Company. But eventually, the British government decided to assume direct responsibility. On the 1st of January 1900, the Northern Protectorate was officially established under British administration. Lord Lugard became its first High Commissioner. When I first read that, I imagined Britain completely replacing the existing system of government. But that wasn't what happened. Instead, Lugard introduced a system that would later become famous throughout the British Empire. Indirect rule. Rather than removing the Emirs from power, the British chose to govern through them. The Emirs remained in office. They continued overseeing local administration, collecting taxes, and maintaining order. But now they answered to British colonial officials known as residents. The British supervised. The Emirs administered. It was a partnership, although one in which ultimate authority rested with the colonial government. Many British officials believed this approach was practical because it allowed them to govern a huge territory with relatively few European administrators. From Britain's perspective, it saved money and reduced resistance. From the perspective of many local communities, however, life was beginning to change. New taxes were introduced. Colonial policies influenced local administration. Economic priorities shifted. Traditional rulers found themselves balancing the expectations of their own people with the demands of colonial authorities. Some accepted the new arrangement. Others resisted aspects of it. As I read more personal accounts from that period, I realized something important. History is rarely black and white. For some people, colonial administration brought new roads, improved communications, and greater connections with international trade. For others, it meant reduced political independence and decisions being made by a foreign power. Both realities existed at the same time. And understanding both sides helps us appreciate just how complex our history really is. Then another question crossed my mind. Why was Britain so interested in northern Nigeria in the first place? The answer became clearer the more I studied. The region occupied an important strategic position. It connected major trade routes. It possessed valuable agricultural resources. It offered access to expanding markets, and controlling the north strengthened Britain's wider influence across West Africa. Everything I was reading pointed toward one inevitable conclusion. The Northern Protectorate wasn't an isolated chapter in history. It was preparing the stage for something much bigger. 14 years after its establishment, the Northern Protectorate would be merged with the Southern Protectorate. Together, they would become one colony. Nigeria. When I finished my research, I closed my notebook and sat quietly for a few moments. I realized I hadn't simply learned about a British colony. I had discovered a society with deep traditions, strong institutions, thriving commerce, respected scholarship, and a rich cultural heritage that existed long before colonial rule. Britain didn't create civilization in northern Nigeria. It encountered an already organized society and governed it in its own way. That discovery completely changed how I understand this part of our history. But our journey is far from over. Because while researching the Northern Protectorate, I found something equally fascinating. The Southern Protectorate was completely different. Different geography, different cultures, different systems of government, different economies, and a very different relationship with the British. That's exactly where we're going in our next documentary. And trust me, you won't want to miss it. Before you go, I'd love to hear from you. What surprised you the most about the Northern Protectorate? Did anything challenge what you thought you already knew? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And let me know which state or which country you're watching from. If you enjoyed this documentary and you're passionate about Nigerian history, African history, and uncovering the stories that shaped our nation, Please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell. By doing that, you'll be joining me as we build one of the largest online libraries of Nigerian history, one story at a time. Thank you so much for watching.
My name is Chinedu Okafor.
Until next time, stay curious, keep learning, and may God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.